The distress signal had been broadcasting for 87 days. Commander Raisa stood in the central communications hub of Jenna Prime, watching the same automated message play for the 10,000th time. Her silver-scaled hands trembled as she adjusted the transmission frequency once again, hoping that perhaps this time, someone out there in the vast darkness of space would finally answer. "This is Commander Raisa of Jenna Prime. Our star is dying. We have detected catastrophic destabilization in our sun's core. Supernova event predicted in 140 days. Our population of 4.2 million requires immediate evacuation assistance. We lack the vessels and technology for self-evacuation. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we beg for your help. Coordinates attached. This is not a drill. This is a cry for survival." The message played in 17 different galactic languages. It carried the weight of an entire civilization's desperation. Yet the response remained the same as it had been for 87 days. Silence. Raisa's communication officer, a young Xena named Torvek, looked up from his console with hollow eyes. "Commander, we have confirmed receipt acknowledgements from 43 different civilizations. They have all heard us. They simply choose not to respond." The words hit Raisa like physical blows. 43 civilizations, 43 chances for survival. 43 times her people had been deemed not worth saving. Across the galaxy, those 43 civilizations had their reasons. The Krillian Empire, masters of faster-than-light travel, had calculated that the fuel cost of sending a rescue fleet would impact their quarterly profits by 3%. The High Council of Meraxis had determined that the Xena system lay outside their sphere of influence, and intervention might set an uncomfortable precedent. The Vordani Collective had simply responded with a brief message. Regrettable. Resources allocated elsewhere. In the crystalline towers of the Luxentine Federation, Ambassador Quelix had presented the Xena distress call to the governing body. The presentation lasted exactly 4 minutes before Senior Administrator Vexthor raised a translucent hand to stop him. The Xena are a minor species with limited technological advancement and no strategic resources, Vexthor had stated, his voice devoid of emotion. The cost-benefit analysis does not justify intervention. Furthermore, their system is located in an unstable region of space. Any rescue operation would risk valuable ships and personnel. The decision is clear. We express our sympathies and move on to matters of greater importance. Quelix had tried to argue, citing moral obligations and galactic unity, but his words fell on deaf ears. The Luxentine Federation, like so many others, had become comfortable in their towers of crystal and metal. Compassion had been calculated away, replaced by efficiency reports and resource management. Back on Jenna Prime, the reality of abandonment was setting in. Raisa walked through the streets of Keln City, the capital of her world, and saw the change in her people. Where once there had been vibrant markets and laughing children, now there was only quiet preparation for the end. Families gathered together. Artists painted final masterpieces. Musicians composed last songs. The Xena had accepted what the galaxy had decided for them. They were not worth saving. Raisa returned to her command center, determined to send the message one more time. Perhaps the 88th day would be different. Perhaps some civilization out there possessed not just technology and power, but something that seemed increasingly rare in the galaxy: compassion. She adjusted the frequencies, boosted the signal strength, and sent the distress call once more into the vast darkness. 17 light-years away, on a blue and green world called Earth, the message finally reached someone who would listen. Captain Marcus. Webb was reviewing supply manifests in his modest office aboard the ESS Perseverance when Lieutenant Sarah Chen burst through the door without knocking. Her face was flushed, and she held a datapad with shaking hands. "Captain, you need to see this immediately," she said, her voice urgent. Webb looked up from his paperwork, one eyebrow raised. Sarah Chen was not prone to dramatics. If she was this agitated, something significant had happened. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "A distress call, sir. Alien origin. They're calling for help. Their sun is going supernova, and no one in the galaxy is responding to them." Webb took the datapad and read the translated message. His weathered face grew grim as he absorbed the information. 4.2 million beings facing extinction. 87 days of crying out for help. 87 days of being ignored. How far away are they? He asked. 96 light-years, sir. It would take us approximately 4 weeks to reach them using our newest slipstream drives. But Captain, that's not the issue. The issue is that dozens of more advanced civilizations have received this same message and chosen not to respond. Webb leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 32 years. They were still considered newcomers, primitives by many of the ancient races. Their technology was generations behind the galactic standard. Their ships were slower, their weapons less powerful, their resources limited. But Webb had learned something important during his years in Earth's fledgling space fleet. Advanced technology meant nothing without the will to use it for good. Lieutenant, call an emergency meeting of all senior officers. 30 minutes. Conference room Alpha. Chen saluted and hurried out. Webb sat alone for a moment, staring at the message on the datapad. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, about how he would feel if she were in danger, and the entire world simply chose to look away. The meeting that followed was intense and divided. Commander James Park, the ship's executive officer, was the first to voice concerns. Captain, I understand the humanitarian impulse, but we have to be realistic. Our ship is designed for exploration and diplomacy, not large-scale evacuation. We have capacity for maybe 300 passengers in emergency conditions. They need to evacuate over 4 million people. Then we bring more ships, Webb replied simply. Sir, we don't have authorization from Earth Command for an operation of this scale, interjected Lieutenant Commander David Okonkwo, the tactical officer. This would require mobilizing a significant portion of our fleet. The political ramifications alone are less important than 4 million lives, Webb cut him off. I'm not suggesting we go rogue, Commander. I'm suggesting we make a formal request to Earth Command and the United Earth Council. We present them with the facts and let them make the decision. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the chief medical officer, spoke up. Her voice was quiet but firm. Captain, I've studied the Zhena physiology based on the data attached to their distress call. They're carbon-based oxygen breathers, similar environmental needs to humans. We can accommodate them on our ships with minor adjustments. The real question isn't whether we can help. It's whether we will. Chief Engineer Ramon Torres nodded in agreement. The doc's right, Captain. I can retrofit our cargo bays for life support in 48 hours. Won't be comfortable, but it'll keep them alive. And if Earth sends the colony ships, the Endeavour-class vessels, we could transport maybe 500,000 per ship. Webb looked around the table at his officers. He saw doubt in some eyes, determination in others, but in all of them, he saw the quality that made humanity unique. They were still deciding whether to help, not calculating profit margins and political consequences first. Here's what we're going to do, Webb said, standing up. Lieutenant Chen, you'll draft a detailed proposal for Earth Command. Include everything: distance, time, resource requirements, risks. Commander Park, work with Torres on logistics. How many ships would we realistically need? What kind of support would be necessary? I want real numbers, not optimistic guesses. He paused, meeting each officer's eyes. But before we send anything to Earth, I want to send a message to the Zhena. I want them to know that someone heard them. That someone cares. Sarah Chen nodded. What should the message say, Captain? Webb thought for a moment, then spoke carefully, knowing these words would either kindle hope or cruel false promises. Tell them, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the Earth ship Perseverance. We have received your distress call. We are humanity and we hear you. We are currently seeking authorization for a rescue operation. Do not give up hope. Help is being prepared. Provide all available data on your situation. We will respond within 72 hours with a definitive plan. You are not alone, Chen typed rapidly, encoding the message. Sir, should I mention that we're a relatively new species? That our technology is limited compared to others who have ignored them. No, Webb said firmly. What matters isn't how advanced we are. What matters is that we're coming. Send the message, Lieutenant. The communication went out into space, traveling at light speed toward Zhena Prime. It would take time to reach them, but for the first time in 87 days, an answer was finally on its way. On Zhena Prime, Commander Raisa had fallen asleep at her console, exhausted from another day of maintaining the distress signal and managing the growing panic among her people. The soft chime of an incoming message woke her. At first, she thought she had dreamed it, but the console was blinking with a new transmission indicator. The young officer rushed in, alarmed by the urgency in her voice. Commander, what is it? What's wrong? Nothing is wrong, Raisa said, her voice breaking with emotion. For the first time in 87 days, something is right. Read this. Torvik read the message, his eyes widening. Who are these humans? I've never heard of them. Neither have I, Raisa admitted. But they're the first ones to answer. They're the first ones who care. She looked at the star charts on her display, finding the location of Earth. Such a small, distant world, and yet they heard us when empires and federations chose silence. She began typing a response, her fingers flying across the keys. We'll send them everything they need. Our population centers, our technological capabilities, our timeline. If they're willing to try, we'll give them every advantage we can. As the reply transmitted, Raisa allowed herself something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not certainty, not confidence, but genuine hope. Somewhere out there, beings called humans were trying to help. The galaxy had turned away, but these newcomers, these unknowns, had answered. On the ESS Perseverance, Captain Webb received Raisa's reply 72 hours later. The data package was comprehensive, almost desperately detailed. The Jenna had provided everything: population distribution, infrastructure maps, medical requirements, even cultural information about handling their deceased with respect if the worst should happen. Webb spent hours reviewing the information with his senior staff. The scope of the challenge was staggering. 4.2 million beings, 140 days remaining minus the travel time. Limited ship capacity, unknown challenges in coordinating with an alien species. By every reasonable calculation, it was impossible. But Webb had learned long ago that impossible was just another word for nobody's tried hard enough yet. He opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the ESS Perseverance. I am formally requesting authorization for Operation Beacon. We have a civilization crying out for help, and we have the opportunity to answer. I'm transmitting all relevant data. I recommend immediate mobilization of all available colony ships and transport vessels. Time is critical, but success is achievable. He paused, then added, Sir, when humanity reached for the stars, we said we were going to be better than we were on Earth. We said we'd learn from our mistakes. The galaxy is watching to see if we meant it. I believe we did. I believe we can do this, but I need authorization to try. The response from Earth would take hours to arrive, transmitted across 17 light-years of space. Webb spent that time preparing contingency plans, studying the data, and thinking about what this mission would mean. Humanity had always been underestimated. Too emotional, the Luxentine said. Too impulsive, claimed the Krillians. Too willing to risk everything for sentimental reasons, according to the Vordani. Perhaps Webb thought those weren't weaknesses at all. Perhaps the very qualities that made other species dismiss humanity were exactly what the galaxy needed right now. When the authorization finally came through, it was brief and to the point. Operation Beacon is approved. All available resources being mobilized. 13 colony ships en route to your position. Additional support vessels following. Earth is with you, Captain. Bring them home. Webb smiled for the first time in days. He opened a channel to Jenna Prime. Commander Raisa, this is Captain Webb. Help is on the way. We're not going to let your people die. Humanity is coming. Across the galaxy, advanced civilizations that had ignored the Jenna distress call began receiving reports of unusual activity in the Sol system. Ships were being mobilized. Resources were being allocated. Humanity, the newcomer species, the primitives with their outdated technology and sentimental notions, were mounting a rescue operation that everyone else had deemed impossible. In the crystal towers of the Luxentine Federation, Administrator Vexthor watched the reports with cold curiosity. Fascinating, he said to no one in particular. They will fail, of course, but it will be interesting to watch them try. He was wrong about one thing. It would be more than interesting. It would change everything. The ESS Perseverance and its growing fleet of support vessels began their journey into the unknown, carrying with them something that had become rare in the galaxy. The belief that some things matter more than calculations, more than profits, more than convenient treaties. Some things are worth doing simply because they are right. End of Part 1. The human fleet emerged from slipstream space at the edge of the Jenna system, 26 days after receiving the distress call. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the ESS Perseverance, staring at the view screen with a mixture of awe and dread. The Jenna sun dominated the display, a massive orange giant that pulsed with unstable energy. Even from this distance, the sensors detected dangerous fluctuations in its core. Dark spots the size of planets churned across its surface, and brilliant flares erupted randomly, sending deadly radiation streaming into space. "Status report," Webb ordered, his voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in his chest. Lieutenant Sarah Chen worked her console rapidly. "All 13 colony ships accounted for, Captain. The Endeavour, New Horizon, Pioneer, Spirit, and 10 others. We also have 23 support vessels, including medical ships, supply carriers, and repair craft. Total evacuation capacity estimated at 4.6 million in emergency conditions." Webb felt a small measure of relief. They had enough space, barely. But capacity was only the first challenge. "How long do we have?" he asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Dr. Tanaka pulled up the stellar analysis on her screen. The sun's core degradation has accelerated since the Jenna first sent their distress call. Based on current readings, we have approximately 17 days before the supernova event. Maybe 18 if we're lucky. 17 days to evacuate an entire civilization. Webb had overseen complex operations before, but nothing on this scale. Nothing where failure meant the extinction of an entire species. "Open a channel to Commander Raisa," he ordered. The view screen shifted to show the Jenna Command Center. Commander Raisa appeared, her silver scales catching the emergency lighting of her facility. Behind her, Webb could see dozens of Jenna working frantically at various stations. When Raisa saw the human fleet on her displays, her eyes widened with an emotion Webb recognized immediately, hope mixed with disbelief. "Captain Webb," she said, her voice translator rendering her words in perfect English. "You actually came. When our sensors detected your fleet, I thought I was hallucinating from exhaustion." Webb managed a tired smile. "We don't make promises we can't keep, Commander. We're here and we're going to get your people out, but I need your help to make this work. Time is our enemy now." Raisa nodded sharply, her military training evident in every movement. "What do you need from us, Captain?" "Everything," Webb replied honestly. "Population distribution, transportation infrastructure, individuals who require special medical attention. I need to know where your people are and how quickly we can gather them at designated evacuation points." Over the next 6 hours, the command teams from both species worked together, developing an evacuation plan that would have seemed impossible just days before. The Jenna had prepared well during their months of waiting. They had organized their population into districts, identified key gathering points, and compiled detailed lists of who would need priority evacuation. But as the planning continued, a harsh reality became clear. The Jenna were scattered across 6 major cities and hundreds of smaller settlements. Their transportation infrastructure was limited. They had personal vehicles and some public transport, but nothing designed for rapid mass evacuation. Commander James Park voiced what everyone was thinking. "Captain, even with optimal conditions, gathering 4.2 million people and transporting them to landing zones will take time we don't have. We need at least 6 days just for the evacuation process itself, and that's if everything goes perfectly, which it won't." Webb studied the maps and population data, his mind working through scenarios and possibilities. Then an idea struck him, one that made his tactical officer cringe but might actually work. "What if we don't bring them to the ships?" Webb said slowly. "What if we bring the ships to them?" The bridge fell silent. Commander Park stared at him. "Sir, you're suggesting we land colony ships in urban areas? Those vessels aren't designed for atmospheric entry and landing. They're meant to orbit and use shuttles." "They were designed for one specific purpose," Webb corrected. "But that doesn't mean they can't be adapted. Chief Torres, could we modify the colony ships for single-use planetary landings?" The chief engineer appeared on a screen from the Endeavour's engine room, his face smudged with grease. He scratched his head thoughtfully. "Single-use being the key words there, Captain. We could rig emergency landing gear and boost the heat shields. The ships would never fly again, but they could make it down in one piece. Probably. Probably isn't very reassuring, Chief," Sarah Chen muttered. "It's better than definitely leaving millions to die," Webb countered. He turned back to the screen. "Torres, how long to make the modifications?" 4 days if we work around the clock. Maybe 3 if we cut some corners and accept higher risks." Webb made his decision. "Do it in 3. We'll need those extra hours on the back end. Commander Raisa, Can your people prepare landing zones near your major population centers? Clear areas large enough for ships 300 meters long? Rice's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, Captain. We have several open areas near each city. Agricultural zones, parks, sports facilities. We can have them cleared and marked within 2 days. Then we have a plan, Webb declared. It's insane and dangerous, but it's a plan. As the human crews began the frantic work of modifying the colony ships, word of the rescue operation spread across the galaxy. The Galactic News Network broadcast updates constantly. What had begun as a minor story about a doomed species had transformed into something unprecedented.
Humanity's first major humanitarian operation on an interstellar scale. In the crystalline towers of the Luxentine Federation,
Ambassador Quelix watched the broadcast with intense interest. Senior Administrator Vexthor stood beside him, his translucent features unreadable. They're actually attempting it, Quelix said quietly. Those mad humans are landing colony ships on a planet orbiting an unstable star. They will fail, Vexthor stated with certainty. Even if the landings succeed, they cannot evacuate that many beings in such a short time. They lack the organizational infrastructure, the experience, the technology. Perhaps, Quelix replied, or perhaps they have something we've forgotten how to value. Vexthor turned to look at him, curious despite himself. And what is that? The willingness to try anyway. On Jenna Prime, the atmosphere was electric with desperate activity. The Jenna people who had resigned themselves to death now threw themselves into preparation with renewed vigor. They cleared landing zones, organized into evacuation groups, and helped the elderly and infirm prepare for transport. Commander Raisa worked 18-hour days coordinating with Captain Webb and his team. She found herself impressed not just by human determination, but by their creativity. When language barriers created confusion, they used hand gestures and drawings. When technical incompatibilities arose between Jenna and human systems, the human engineers jury-rigged solutions with whatever materials were available. On the third day, Chief Torres declared the colony ships ready for landing. The modifications were crude, he admitted, but they would work once. That was all they needed. Captain Webb assembled the 13 colony ship captains for a final briefing. These men and women would be piloting vessels never designed for atmospheric entry, down through the turbulent air of a world orbiting an unstable star. It was, by any reasonable measure, a suicide mission. I won't lie to you, Webb told them. This is dangerous. We're attempting something that violates every safety protocol and design specification. Any one of you can refuse this mission, and no one will think less of you. Captain Maria Santos of the Endeavor spoke first. She was a grandmother, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen decades of service. Captain Webb, I didn't join the space service to play it safe. I joined to help people. If my ship can save 300,000 Jenna, then that's how I want to use it. One by one, the other captains echoed her sentiment. Not a single one refused. The landings began at dawn on the 17th day. The Endeavor went first, descending through Jenna Prime's atmosphere like a controlled meteor. The heat shields glowed red, then white as friction turned the ship's momentum into blazing energy. On the ground, millions of Jenna watched in silent awe as the massive vessel settled into the cleared agricultural zone outside Keln City, its emergency landing gear straining under the weight. Captain Santos's voice crackled over the comm system. Endeavor is down and stable. Opening loading ramps now. Let's get these people aboard. Over the next 6 hours, all 13 colony ships made successful landings. Not all went smoothly. The New Horizons heat shield partially failed, requiring emergency repairs before evacuees could board. The Pioneer Spirit's landing gear collapsed on touchdown, tilting the ship at a 15-degree angle and forcing evacuees to climb steep ramps. But they were down, and the evacuation could begin in earnest. The Jenna people approached the human ships with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Many had never seen aliens before, and humans looked strange to them with their smooth skin and bilateral symmetry. But the human crews greeted them with smiles and gentle guidance, helping the elderly up ramps, carrying children too tired to walk, ensuring families stayed together. Dr. Tanaka and her medical teams worked tirelessly, assessing the health needs of evacuees and providing care where necessary. They discovered that Jenna physiology was indeed compatible with human medicine in many ways, though some adjustments were needed. As the loading continued, Commander Raisa walked through one of the evacuation zones with Captain Webb. They watched as thousands of Jenna filed orderly into the massive ships, trusting their lives to these strange aliens who had crossed the galaxy to help them. Why? Raisa asked suddenly. Why did you come? Your species gains nothing from this. You risked ships, resources, lives. The advanced civilizations all calculated that we weren't worth saving. What made humans decide differently? Webb was quiet for a moment, watching a human crew member help an elderly Xena woman climb a ramp, speaking gently to her despite the language barrier. About 300 years ago, on Earth there was a massive earthquake in a region called Haiti, Webb said. Poor country, limited resources, no strategic importance to the major powers. But when the disaster struck, help came from everywhere. Not because there was profit in it, not because of political alliances. It came because people saw other people suffering and couldn't look away. He turned to face Raisa. I think humanity learned something important through our history, Commander. We learned it the hard way, through wars and genocides and disasters where good people did nothing. We learned that the measure of a civilization isn't its technology or its wealth, it's what it does when someone needs help. Raisa felt tears forming in her eyes. The galaxy considered us expendable, calculated us as not worth the cost. But you came anyway. The galaxy is wrong, Webb said simply. Every life has value. Every species deserves a chance. If humanity has to teach the rest of the galaxy that lesson, then so be it. By the 14th day, over 3 million Jenna had been loaded onto the ships. The process was faster than anyone had dared hope, thanks to the Jenna people's discipline and the human crew's relentless work. But challenges remained. By the 14th day, over 3 million Jenna had been loaded onto the ships. The process was faster than anyone had dared hope, thanks to the Jenna people's discipline and the human crew's relentless work. But challenges remained. Not everyone could fit on the landed colony ships. Some Jenna lived in remote settlements too far from the landing zones. The human shuttlecraft worked continuously, ferrying people from distant locations, but time was running out. Lieutenant Chen reported grim news to Webb on the 15th day. Captain, stellar analysis shows the sun's collapse has accelerated further. We have approximately 48 hours, not 72, and we still have over 800,000 Jenna scattered across remote locations. Webb's jaw tightened. They were so close. They had saved millions, but 800,000 remained. 800,000 lives that would be lost if they couldn't find a solution. What if we used the Perseverance? Webb said suddenly. And every other support vessel with atmospheric capability. We strip them down, remove everything non-essential, pack them with evacuees. Commander Park looked horrified. Captain, that would leave us without a flagship, without proper support infrastructure for the journey home. There won't be a journey home if we leave 800,000 people behind, Webb replied firmly. We came here to save lives. All of them, not just the convenient ones. Start the modifications. The next 36 hours were chaos. The Perseverance and every other atmospheric-capable ship was stripped of non-essential equipment, creating temporary living spaces in cargo bays, storage areas, even engine rooms. Safety regulations were ignored. Comfort was abandoned. The only priority was capacity. On the 16th day, with less than 24 hours remaining, the final shuttles landed with the last groups of Jenna. Commander Raisa was on the final shuttle herself, having refused to leave until she confirmed every last citizen had been accounted for. As her shuttle touched down on the Perseverance's landing bay, Raisa saw Captain Webb waiting for her, his face haggard from exhaustion but lit with triumph. Is that everyone? He asked. Every single Jenna, Raisa confirmed, her voice breaking. 4.2 million exactly. You did it, Captain. You saved us all. Webb allowed himself a brief smile before his command training reasserted itself. We're not safe yet. All ships, this is Captain Webb. Begin immediate launch sequence. We need to be clear of the system before that sun goes supernova. The takeoffs were even more dangerous than the landings. The colony ships, never designed to launch from planetary surfaces, groaned and shuddered as their engines fought against gravity. The New Horizon lost one engine entirely during ascent, forcing it to limp into orbit on emergency power. But one by one, all the ships made it to space. As the fleet regrouped and prepared to jump to slipstream, Webb took one last look at Jenna Prime through the view screen. It was a beautiful world, with blue oceans and green continents, cities that sparkled in the light of their dying sun. In a few hours it would all be gone. Set course for Earth, he ordered. Maximum safe speed. Let's take our passengers home. The fleet jumped to slipstream just as the first warning signs of the supernova began. Behind them, the Jenna sun collapsed and then exploded in a brilliant flash that would be visible across 100 light-years. But the Jenna people were safe, carried away from destruction by a species they had never met before, rescued by beings the galaxy had dismissed as primitive and emotional. Across the galaxy, the impossible rescue became the story of the century. The Galactic News Network broadcast continuous coverage of the human fleet's journey back to Earth. Ambassador Quelix used the opportunity to call an emergency session of the Galactic Council. This council claimed that the Jenna rescue was economically unfeasible. Quelix stated, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. Humanity proved us wrong. We said it was logistically impossible. They proved us wrong again. We calculated that the cost was too high. They decided that some things are worth more than profit. He looked around at the assembled representatives, seeing discomfort on many faces. Perhaps it is time we examine not just our calculations but our values. Humanity has shown us what we have become, efficient, logical, and utterly heartless. They have shown us what we have lost. Senior Administrator Vexthor stood to respond, but for once he had no words. The broadcasts from the human fleet spoke louder than any argument. Videos showed Jenna children laughing with human crew members despite the language barrier. Images captured elderly Jenna embracing human medics who had cared for them. Reports described how humans had sacrificed their own comfort and safety to ensure every Jenna survived. 3 weeks later, the human fleet arrived at Earth. The Jenna refugees received a welcome that brought tears to Commander Raisa's eyes. Millions of humans had prepared temporary housing, donated supplies, and volunteered to help the refugees adjust to their new home. Captain Webb stood with Commander Raisa on the observation deck of the Perseverance, looking down at Earth's blue surface. What will your people do now? Webb asked. You're far from your home in a strange part of the galaxy. She turned to face Webb directly. The galaxy dismissed you as primitives. They were wrong. You are more advanced than any of them, not in technology, but in the only measure that truly matters, compassion. 6 months later, the Galactic Council passed the Humanitarian Aid Accord, establishing protocols and resources for responding to species-level emergencies. The accord was nicknamed the Webb Protocol by supporters and critics alike. The Jenna people established a new settlement on a moon of Saturn, naming their capital city New Hope in honor of the colony ship that had carried many of them to safety. They became humanity's strongest allies and advocates in galactic politics, and throughout the galaxy, whenever someone suggested that a problem was too expensive to solve, too difficult to attempt, or too risky to undertake, someone else would inevitably respond with 3 words that had become legendary. Ask the humans. Because humanity had proven something that the ancient civilizations had forgotten, that the measure of intelligence is not just what you know, but what you do with that knowledge. That the measure of power is not just what you possess, but how you use it to help others. The galaxy had turned away from the Jenna's cries for help, comfortable in their calculations and treaties. But humanity had answered not because it was easy or profitable, but because it was right. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. Commander Raisa would later write in her memoirs, "They came when no one else would. They risked everything to save people they had never met. They taught the galaxy a lesson it desperately needed to learn. When the beacon of hope grows dim and the powerful turn away, look for humanity. They will answer the call." End of part 2.